Welcome, Sebastian. It's wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You started off with Reuters in 1974, went on to BBC. You were in Warsaw.
Yes. My first posting in Warsaw for the BBC.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have the honor of having been expelled from Russia.
Well, dubious honor, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Why? Why were you asked to leave?
It was a package deal. Britain threw out 31 KGB spies, so they turned round and threw out 31 British, not spies, but British
I was suspecting that
people.
I was suspecting that about you, because when I was reading, researching, I read that you learned Russian and you learned German. That's very good.
Good Cold War languages.
Exactly.
Yes.
Why did you learn German and Russian?
Well, I was fed up with French, and languages was the only thing I was good at, and Russia seemed like this big black hole where a lot went in but nothing ever came out, so I was curious. Wonderful literature, so I started learning Russian and got fascinated by the place.
This was in school or in college or
This
later?
was at university. It's
okay.
University, yeah.
And so it came in use when you were in Russia,
Certainly
because
did.
at that time not many people spoke English then.
Well, the ones who did speak English spoke very good English. And
And those were the spies.
Well, they always knew more about us than we knew about them.
That's it.
Actually. And ordinary people knew more about us than we did about them. They knew about our culture, they knew about our music, they knew, the Beatles were big in those days in the Soviet Union. And it was all a voyage of discovery. It was a fascinating place because the little jigsaw pieces, you finally got to see how one or two of them fitted together. Because it was such an opaque place, such a mystery. Everybody, even when they worked in the same building, they would work in separate offices with separate phones. Nobody knew what anybody in the next room was doing.
And if they learnt of anything, they reported it?
Well, sometimes, yes. And the way you found out that you'd fallen foul of the system was, suddenly you stopped getting your newspaper or your subscription to Time magazine. If you were that privileged to get one, that suddenly disappeared. So, so you knew that the system had run you over. But,
what an exciting place to report from. So you were basically...
It was extremely exciting.
So it was really like snooping rather than...
No, because you did everything openly. I mean, I never snooped. I never tried to lose the people who followed you. I did everything openly because I was working within the law, and that was the only way to operate. But I went out, I met as many Russians as I could and tried to find out what was going on. The interesting stuff, the political stuff, the social stuff. Try and build some picture of the society that I was privileged to live in, certainly as a foreigner.
Did you ever speak to the people who followed you?
No, I didn't, but we used to speak to them in the apartment, assuming that they were listening. And I remember one New Year's Eve, and there was a whole group of us foreign correspondents. We were sitting around celebrating New Year's Eve.
You asked for more vodka?
No, we asked that. We said we wondered what Boris was doing tonight.
Getting drunk? What else?
And the phone rang, and all I could hear at the other end was the pop of a champagne cork. And I thought, well, maybe they have a sense of humor after all.
That's cool. That's really interesting. That's funny. And now you went through being the moderator for the Doha Debates, which was extremely popular and a very interesting series. And now you're here in India for The Outsider. Now, if you compare the Doha Debates, which is literally like creating an oasis in a desert, you landed in India, which I would comparatively say is almost like a Tower of Babel, to cacophony of noise, everyone screaming at each other, nobody listening, utter confusion, but we all know everything. So,
and that's very comforting. It's very comforting to be in a place where people know everything. It's very good. It's really good. You get people who are really engaged.
And passionate.
And passionate about it. They're not indifferent to what goes on in their society. And
but then nobody's listening.
This is exciting. Well, I don't know, are they? You know that better than I do. Our audiences seem to listen. The great thing about doing debates here is that, we take a vote before and after the debate. And we don't declare the one before until after the debate. And we see how opinion has shifted during the course of the debate. We've had shifts as much as 22%, which shows to me one interesting thing, that people are actually listening. Not just shouting at each other, but listening and prepared to change their mind. So they have an open mind. Well, you can't ask for much more in a debate than that.
But the difference I've seen in your Doha Debates and The Outsider is that it wasn't very difficult for you to control people in the Doha Debates. in The Outsider, people don't shut up easily in India.
They don't. No,
you have to be really firm and cut them off.
Yeah, you do. Yes,
And
yes. But I mean, the reason for that is otherwise nobody hears anything. If everybody's shouting, it's just a pure and simple piece of television mechanics. Everybody shouts, nobody hears. I don't want to stop them talking. I think what they're saying is fascinating a lot of the time. We've had some wonderful speakers, but the audience has got to hear, and everybody's shouting at each other. Nobody gets anything out of it. So you want heat, but you want light as well.
In the women's debate, you had a problem there. Because a couple of women were just not stopping. Shoma is, you press the button and she rolls. You really have to not pause, just really hack her to stop.
Yes, I love the enthusiasm.
And she was amazing.
I love the enthusiasm. Yes.
So do you think there was any light shone, as you said, at the end of that debate?
This is always what I ask the audience at the end. And when the cameras are off, I go and say, look, was this useful? And if it was, how was it useful? And would you come to this kind of debate again? And this kind of thing. And I get some positive answers out of it, and they have some constructive things to say. So I'm trying to, look, this is a new thing for me. It may be the only series I ever do in India, I don't know, but it's fascinating to have the chance to talk to people, as I say, who are engaged. And I don't mean just the speakers, but I mean the audience as well. We get a whole load of people with their hands up every time, asking questions. There's no shortage of questions. We could go on for 2 hours.
Yeah, I know.
We actually go on for 1 hour, but we could go on for 2. And you're actually taking part in one, so
yes.
you'll see.
Have you had any negative reactions after the show, that somebody says it just doesn't work? Or
no.
Indians are too polite.
Yes, probably. Because normally when you get a reaction, it is a hostile one. I mean, I've been broadcasting for God knows how many years, and every time I did a hard talk, you'd get a hostile reaction from whoever supported the person who was sitting in your seat. You know, if you interviewed an Israeli, then the whole of Israel rose up against you the next day. If you interviewed an Arab, well, it was the same thing there. And then they would love you again when you did it to the other side. So, yeah, you're used to negative reactions. Of course you get negative reactions. You put your head on the block, you have to expect people are going to chop it off. That's life.
Have you been looking at Indian journalism at all on television and in print?
Yes, it's lively stuff. It's combative, it's lively. You've got a government which is mired in scandal, and the press seems to have no hesitation about washing the government's dirty linen for it on innumerable occasions. But you know, there's a lot of sharp comment, a lot of bright comment. I mean, for instance, I read Manu Joseph when he writes for the Herald Tribune. It's very sharp observations.
His new book is
India.
quite amazing.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. But well, he's one of the people I've read for a long time about India. Marvellous insights.
Yes.
Marvellous insights.
But are you aware of paid news?
Yes, I am aware of paid news. I am also aware about what the Press Council said about it in 2010, and more importantly, what they didn't say about it and what was buried. So yes, the paid news, paid comment, yes, I know about that.
So when you read, say, Indian newspapers, you would be looking for who's planting what story against whom?
Well, I think you keep that at the back of your mind. I mean, when you read journalism anywhere, do you accept at face value everything that you read?
I think in America, I found people do.
I guess I don't.
We are so disillusioned with our politicians and the media that Indians are far more skeptical of everything. Whereas I think in America particularly, I'm not talking about England, where a lot of this stuff has come out with the Sun and Murdoch papers and all that. I think now there's a different way of looking at the press. But in America, certainly they do accept what they read.
Well, they're very trusting people.
Yeah, well, there is a suspension of disbelief with them.
Yes.
With us, we disbelieve everything.
Yes, and in Europe, I think we do too.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, we always say in Britain that Guy Fawkes was the last person to enter Parliament with honest intentions.
And got burnt.
And look what happened to him. Well, he wanted to blow the place up, didn't he? So,
Or he gets burnt.
in the end.
Now, do you think that journalism should not cross certain lines, such as, for example, what has happened with the Duchess of Cambridge? Do you think that's crossing the line of privacy, of publishing pictures of her in her private moments with her husband?
Look, I think two things about that. I think, yes, it did cross the line, but at the same time, when you're in the public eye, having a free press means having the freedom to abuse that freedom as well. I think the press did abuse its freedom, but I wouldn't clamp down on the press for doing it. I think you can, make your displeasure clear. You can go to the courts.
Well, they have.
To seek redress. But I'm not looking for the heavy hand of censorship because of this. People always abuse freedom. It's not a reason for not having freedom. It's not a reason for limiting it. But you have to accept that things are going to go wrong. You're going to upset people. But we have to all get used to being upset. One of the things that really makes me mad these days is the death of tolerance. When did you last hear people talking about tolerance?
Tolerance from the subjects who have been exposed?
No, tolerance of other people's points of view, tolerance of things that are going to upset me. I mean, when I was in the Middle East, one of the last debates I did for Doha Debates was that censorship makes a mockery of the arts. And a young boy stands up and he says, these Danish cartoons that we've seen, you have to ban them. I said, why? I said, because we don't like them. I said, so you want to ban everything you don't like?
Don't look at it.
Well, don't look at it. But I mean, the idea that, you can't be upset. Nobody's allowed to upset you, so we'll ban everything. We'll ban everything then, because something's going to upset anybody.
So Thomas Friedman has written about, and other people have also, about this fact that Islamic countries, their television channels are abusing Jews, the Jewish faith, Hindus as infidels, Christians, and none of us riot based on that abuse. And you see what is happening now in what is called the anti-Islamic film, which I actually call it the anti-intelligence film because it's really stupid if you watch it. And you see all this coverage. Newsweek puts it the face of Islamic anger on the cover. Do you think, as one of your prime ministers said, this oxygen of publicity encourages it? Should we not cover this kind of thing?
I think there are lots of things that we cover that we shouldn't do, but we have the right to cover them. And I would defend anybody's right to offend somebody else. I'm not talking about incitement to hatred. I'm not talking about incitement to violence. There have to be laws in place to prevent that sort of thing happening. I'm not talking about racial abuse either. These things are beyond the pale in every society. Yeah. But one should always err towards the side of freedom. Otherwise, you'll just end up appeasing the latest mob. And that
that's what's
on
happening.
And on and on.
It's adding up, isn't it? It's become a culture that because of the fear of your own offices being burnt down. Absolutely. For example, CNN, when they covered, they were covering the cartoons in Norway, and they had Christopher Hitchens on. And Christopher Hitchens, the late Christopher Hitchens, accused them of saying, he told the anchor person that you have mosaicked the cartoons not because you are afraid of hurting someone's sensibilities, but because you're afraid of them.
Of the reaction.
Of the reaction, of your burning the place.
You appease the mob.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And
whether there is one or not.
Well, in India, it happens regularly. It happens regularly. And what role do you think journalism has to play in this? In the sense that won't you say that the less publicity we give these mobs, the less inspired they'll be to do this kind of thing?
Look, I don't think it's that. I think, we cannot tiptoe around subjects simply because they will offend people, or they may cause a demonstration, or somebody may go mad. If we start doing that, we'll never report on anything. Mm-hmm. News will always offend somebody somewhere. I mean, we have to be standard bearers for free speech, not just journalists. We have to campaign for free speech wherever we can. And that includes the right to reveal the wrongs of society, but also the right to offend people unwittingly, unintentionally, simply because what you're saying is true. I mean, if you set out to rabble-rouse, if you set out with malicious intent to get people to riot and burn buildings or kill people, this is absolutely beyond the pale. This is not what I'm talking about. But if in the course of legitimate, serious accurate, fair journalism, you do offend people and you know you're going to offend people, you should have the right to do that.
And do you think that in many of your interviews in Hard Talk, and I do recall one interview that you did with Amitabh Bachchan, which he was seriously offended because I think in his view you crossed the line in asking him a personal question about having an affair with an actress. Do you think that that was a fair question?
I think it was a fair question if it was already in the public domain, yes. Because actors and actresses want the public to follow them, want to be interested in them. I don't think I dwelt very much on it, I have to say. Out of 23 minutes, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't very long at all. But, you know, in Hard Talk, we always reserved the right to talk about everything. We never made any deals with people. And we lost a lot of interviewees that way.
Who did you lose?
Well, we lost Tony Blair, for instance. He never came on. In 7.5 years of the program, Tony Blair wouldn't once come on the program because we wouldn't do a deal. We wouldn't say we're not going to talk about this or that. We always talked about everything.
He wanted a structured, staged
His
question
people
answer.
did. His people did, yeah.
What were they afraid of, you think?
Everything, I think. Yeah. And I asked one of his people, long after he was out of power, I asked one of his people, why did you never put Blair in front of my cameras? He said, well, what was in it for him? Which I thought was an interesting
To give his point of view, what else?
Yeah, he said, 25 minutes of gratuitous rudeness from you? No, he said, we weren't going to go for that. I said, hardly 25 minutes of gratuitous rudeness. Tough questions, yes. But I mean, people have said, yes, you were rude. I don't think I was. I think I was tough. I think I was robust. And if I crossed the line and became rude, I apologized to people. And I did on several occasions apologize to people. Because I think I did go too far.
In which instances?
Well, a couple of instances in the Middle East, for instance. But sometimes, you know, if the interviewee puts it onto a personal level, you can ignore it only to a certain level. You have to answer it in the end. And sometimes, yeah, you get passionate about it.
But sometimes, is it because, do you think it happens to a journalist that when you know someone personally, which is a hazard in India, because especially it's changing in this generation, but in my generation, we all grew up together, went to the same schools, those same people are now in power, you end up interviewing them, we're all, you know, adversaries and not adversaries, meaning you grew up with each other.
You're on first name terms.
It's a problem. Now, say someone like a star like Bachchan, and you are aware that his children are going to be watching this interview, or his wife would be. Would that sort of hold you back, you think?
I don't think so. I don't think one should practice censorship, but I think there are two things you have to be. You have to be accurate and fair, and they're not necessarily the same things, but you have to say, is this fair comment? Is this a fair question, given the publicity that is out there, given what people are already saying, given how this might affect your reputation, you as a role model, etc. I think those are legitimate questions. I wouldn't dwell on it, though. I mean, I don't think I ever dwelt on subjects like that.
One of the interviews that I was able to dig up on YouTube, old ones, two of them, in fact, were with Sheikh Abu Hamza. Why would you give a man like that a platform to, you know, talk about his beliefs in really just promote violence?
Well, I don't think in the course of the interview he did promote violence.
Well, he justified it. That was.
But I think it's important to listen to views that maybe the mainstream doesn't like. Again, because, you know, standard bearers for free speech. I don't think the mainstream would like Abu Hamza's views, but a lot of them have made up their mind without ever listening to them.
True.
So put him in an adversarial situation, ask him difficult questions, and make him justify what he did, and at least find out who this man is, who everybody loves to hate. Because otherwise it's just one dog following another dog and barking at the same time at the same person. You want people to understand, why do I dislike his views? You know, let's challenge those views. Let's not just pretend they don't exist and hide them away. There are plenty of people, plenty of Abu Hamzas in Britain, plenty of people espouse those views. Let's listen to them. Let's test them. Let's put them under pressure.
Did you feel you put him under pressure?
I think so. I think so. Certainly tried. Certainly tried.
I think you could have been rougher with him. In my view, you were kind.
I don't know. I don't think he was that happy with the interview at the end of it.
That's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
So tell me, what has been the worst moments in your time here in India in your outsider debates?
Well, I haven't had worst moments actually. I've had a lot of good moments, a lot of very sharp discussion, a lot of humour where I didn't expect it. You know, people are very passionate about their views, but they can still laugh at themselves sometimes, which I think is a great quality.
Who are these people who are willing to laugh at themselves? That's breaking news in India.
Well, if you watch the series, you'll see some of them.
I've been watching it.
You'll see some of them. We get humour in surprising places, actually. Talking about the justice system, you know, with Minister Khurshid. We had some fun with him. He showed an unexpectedly humorous side of his nature. No, for me, they've been interesting discussions. I hope I've learned a lot. But I come back to the point, we've had great serious engagement, both from speakers and from the audience as well. And to see young people, especially with open minds. I mean, I think to myself always, if I walk down Oxford Street in London and I pulled 150 people off the street, would they really be as engaged as this in the topics of the day that affect them? And we're talking about justice, talking about equality, talking about education, talking about whether there's honest business or dynastic politics or any of the subjects that we've touched on in the last few weeks here in India. And if I raise those subjects, what kind of answers would what kind of intelligent questions would I get? I don't think I'd get half as good.
Really?
An engagement from an ordinary crowd in London.
Well, Indians love arguments.
Doing this.
Yes,
they do.
The argumentative Indian, Amartya Sen, and we love it. We love arguing.
Well, I remember somebody in the foreign ministry in Delhi saying to me, you know, you have two people, okay? They don't speak the same language, they don't have the same culture, they don't have the same religion, they don't like the same books, they don't like the same music. They must be Indian, he said. Must be Indian. So I've always carried that around with me, thinking, yes, that's probably true. Now, 17 different languages on each banknote, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah. What is it like technically working in, as compared to Doha, working in India? Have you had problems?
It's a joy. I have to say, it's a joy. We work with superb professionals. You go into the studio, everything works. I mean, I think in one instance only, in the 9 debates that we've recorded so far, have we had a problem with a microphone or a light or something. Absolutely minor. But in the Middle East, getting the technical things to work is like pushing a big donkey up a very steep hill. You're always going to get, especially in Cairo, especially in Tunisia, it's an effort to get 3 microphones that work for an audience. It really is. But I tell you something else about being in India.
Maybe it's deliberate. They don't like free speech. Kill the mics.
I don't think, if it was that, I would understand it. But it's not even that. But getting things done in India, I have to say, is a joy. My glasses broke. I walk into the shopping mall. A new pair is delivered to me the next day. The charger for my computer, which is 6 years old, nobody has a charger. In Europe, they'd say throw it away. Here, I get on the internet. I have a company bring it to me in 3 hours, a new one. I mean, Europe, I just couldn't find that anywhere. So there are service industries here that we can only dream about.
Yeah, and that's despite...
Actually serving people, giving them what they want.
That's despite the government trying to stop them in every way.
But it makes life very easy on one level, very easy. You know you can get the things that you need. There are people there who supply it, yeah. They turn up. They give you what you want.
It's great to hear that. Could you explain your red socks?
Yes, this is the only ones that the laundry had left me this morning. So it wasn't intentional. There wasn't a particular reason for the red socks. That was it.
They look
great. A domestic arrangement.
I thought it was part of the Union Jack flying in India.
No, it's flown enough in India, I think.
That's true. Well, thank you very much, Tim. It's been lovely.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you.